Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on motivating math students to learn, tips from the new edition of Winning at Math. Our speaker today is Winning at Math author, Dr. Paul Nolting. Dr. Nolting is a national expert in assessing math learning problems, developing effective student learning strategies, and assessing institutional variables that affect math success and math study skills. Over the last 25 years, he has consulted with over 100 colleges, universities, and high schools to improve success in the math classroom. He has conducted numerous national conference workshops on math learning and disability issues at the American Math Association of Two-Year Colleges, American Math Association, National Association for Developmental Education, and the Association on Higher Education and Disabilities. He is now consulting with colleges on developing their co-requisite courses. Dr. Nolting holds his PhD in education in curriculum instruction from the University of South Florida. He is the author of Winning at Math, which is the only math-specific study skills book to offer statistical evidence demonstrating an improvement in students' ability to learn math and make better grades. We are excited that Dr. Nolting is here to share his experience and knowledge with us today. If you have any questions during the webinar, please enter those in the Q&A box and we will address them at the end of the talk. On that note, I will hand it over to our presenter.
Hey, Danny. Thanks for introducing me, and I thank the audience for being out there and joining us on this afternoon. I'm down right below Tampa, Florida. Luckily, the hurricane that you've been hearing about didn't really hit us, and we actually have cool weather. It's getting down, it'll get up to about 78 degrees, and for us, that's cool. But today what we want to do is just talk about not just the Winning at Math text, but the different reasons why we're looking at study strategies, how study strategies help students become more successful, and the new type of technology that's out there, and the new course designs. Because that's really driving a lot of us, and what we're supposed to be doing is how can we make the course designs more successful for us. And I do know, especially in California, because I've been working with them a lot lately, that sometimes the legislators kind of mandate things for us to do. And it's kind of our job to figure out how to make that more successful. And as we do this webinar, you'll get some tips. I'm going to talk about various areas and aspects, a little more research, reasons why I did this. And we're going to go more into detail on how to make your students successful. Of course, that is the first question. You know, what was your motivation to write in the 7th edition? And just like I said, it's the new research, the new learning, the new redesign, especially the co-recs. And also what we're finding out a lot of times is these new redesigns are causing anxiety among the students and causing anxiety among the faculty. Because sometimes we're being told to talk differently, we're being told to talk a specific way, and some of it's in our control, some of it's out of our control. So what we have done in looking at the new Winning at Math text is try to help the students learn how to learn faster. And that's one thing we've been picking up is how do you make them learn faster? How do you make them learn outside the classroom? For example, we're going to still get into, you know, how learning math is different and how to take control of your learning. That's a little bit different than the first, you know, the last edition. We're kind of combining those because we want students to take control immediately and help them themselves become successful and have them understand why it's different. We'll get to that. We did a little more improvement on the how do you listen, how do you take notes, and basically with the note taking, it's technology, and we're going to get into that a little more differently. How to improve your study environment, time management, reading. That's again, where is your study environment? My day it was at Stroginger Library at Florida State University. That usually doesn't happen anymore. It's everywhere. You know, how do you use apps? How do you use your time the best way? How do you really get into time management when you're working and going to school? And the reading is something we'll talk about. You know, how do you read the textbook? Or is it online? We're going to get to all these things. The homework has really changed. Most of it, as you know, is online. A lot of different homework systems. A lot of our students are definitely hooked on them, and some of them do a good job. Some of them we got to help the students understand what to do with them. to the point that we got to teach them that, we got to have some notes on the homework. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on too. Like I said, the anxiety is going up, managing math and test anxiety, it's going up. I have an article that's actually out by the University of Chicago and the Paris Economic Fund, basically, in Paris, that says math anxiety is killing STEM programs, not just in America, around the world. So now the world is looking at this whole thing about anxiety. And we're looking more at anxiety, how to help them reduce it, and how you, the instructor, can do it, how you can really help them reduce their anxiety too. And the old days, we just told them to study more. Well, we're finding out that really does help a little bit, but hey, they need more than that. And then looking at the memory process, what we're finding out more from a psychological point of view is how to use the memory process we'll get into, and how does that connect into learning strategies. In other words, where is the memory breaking down? Part of our job is kind of to determine that and then to help the student and refer them out for resources. But like I said, that's just like an overview. We're going to go more into this in a little more detail, but just think about those areas and, send those questions in to Danny. And if he gets a bunch of questions on one thing, he'll stop me and I'll start talking about it some more. So this is like the big overview of the book, the Winning Math Review. The new topics, we had a lot of instructor input. They told me what they liked and they told me what they didn't like. I agree with most of it, disagree with some of it, but that's how authors are. But we took their word for it. We had student input. I have a list of things that the students said they liked and what they didn't like. And what we're looking at is that note-taking in technology is a big deal. We'll get into that a little more later on. The mindset and mindfulness, which are different. We really got into those new topics. The stages of memory, we did before, but not as in depth as we're doing now, because we're using it almost as a diagnostic. And then I got into test attitudes. Students are more wary of tests today. Sometimes they mean more. And since they're in sometimes co-recs, they're being tested on things they don't know. So that becomes an issue. Then we also looked at the reading we talked about earlier, and how to make it a better reading with instructor input and student input. Taking control, we'll get more into that, like I said earlier. And this whole thing on math self-efficacy. Several articles on that. Julie Phelps has written one that's really good on how you use math efficacy in the classroom. And if you go to the AMATIC conference, actually we'll be talking about that in the National Math Summit. And then we get into student scenarios. I'm looking now at students trying to identify themselves in the book under different scenarios, and then what you do about it. It's nice to read about it, but when you look at it and go, that's me, that's when we really get a bunch of change. And then, like I said earlier, the research, a lot of research out now on test and math anxiety, more research out in redesigns. We know that support, the more support you give the different redesigns, the better it is. The homework, we really have to change that, not the system, because Hawks has an excellent homework system. We got to change how the students use it better, and we'll get into that. And the self-efficacy, what is this? What does this really mean? And I'm hitting that several times, because it's not only looking at the activities that we talked about, but the motivation. How do we get them motivated and provide them hope? How do we get them to think they can really pass math? And I'm still believing that they don't have to like it. They just need to pass it, because I've been past that stage and trying to be the Apostle Paul of math, convincing everybody. I kind of subvertly, I should say, help them understand that it's great and moving on. So what are some of the enhanced topics in the Winning in Math that help students become better study habits? We like to get more into self-learning, really self-learning. How do you learn study skills outside? How do you apply that? Because when you get to co-recs, we're going to have you studying math that is not being taught, but how do you learn it outside? The technology, get into the apps. And I know this is important, and we'll get down to some of the apps in a few minutes. And if you like apps or don't like apps, apps are like the calculators back in the 20 or 30 years ago. And that still is an issue when I go around the country. That's interesting, but it still is an issue. The resource plan, that's something different. How do you make a resource plan for yourself? How do you best use the math lab, the Math Learning Resource Center? This is not the math success plan, which we'll get into. This is, what is your plan to use things? And it can't be, I think I'm going to study one day. No, it has to be that. Then we get more in working with your tutors. How do you work with them? And boy, that's my pet peeve when I ran a math lab. And this was a math lab that was really kind of separate from the Learning Resource Center. It really was for students who were failing. In other words, the only way you got in my math lab is repeating the course or you had a disability. So we really developed strategies and taught the students how to be tutored. We got to do that again. And how do you work with classmates? Totally different now. With all the Skype issues, you can do group Skype, you can do anything. We got to teach them these things. And the checklist for knowledge, that's the end of the textbook. I just had them read it before. Now I'm going to have them actually check it off. And I have another one which they actually write down which they did. So we did that in the new terminology, new references, up-to-date references on what's going on. Then also we rewrote the chapters to make them more personal to the student. It's more reading like, this is me, not like we're telling them what to do. And we rearranged and combined, like you already saw, the chapters. So we put the most important things up front based on what the instructors and students told us, and put some of the least important in the back, but we condensed it because we got to do this faster. We really got to get the study skills learned by midterm. And that's what we're finding out when I do a lot of work with the co-rec courses and the co-rec itself. Like for the co-rec for college algebra I'm working with in California, the math study skills are taught in the co-rec, along with just-in-time learning. So this is kind of like an overview of what we're doing, we're talking about. Math learning is different. We still got that in there. We got to convince them. And we do convince them it's learning different. And also, more math, more money. You heard me say that, if you heard me before, and I'll say it again. When students start talking about why they're taking math, I just listen and listen and listen. Then I ask them how much money they want to make. Then I show them these charts. I have people that I give permission to copy the chart. They actually make it in a poster and put it in their room. And the idea is more math, more money, except for us teachers. And you're probably laughing now. We don't get that much money. But what it shows the students, this is the end results. If you're looking at where am I going, why am I taking it, it's basically not just to graduate, but to get the career you want. That's why we get into self-efficacy. That's why we get into motivation. That's how they get motivated. And I'll show you another way in a minute, because they have to believe they can do it to try. Again, they don't have to like it, but at the end, they usually do. Okay? This is the graph I put up all the time. What's going on? What are the variables? If you've seen my talk, you've seen it again. I've changed it. I got some resources on the left-hand side. And Linda Zintek is another person out of Texas who said that basically 41% of the students' math grade is more non-cognitive, not instructional skills. It's the motivation, the characteristics, the self-efficacy, the anxiety issues and dealing with that. So if you see that chart on the right, now I have 25 to 41%. Bloom in the old days, years ago, said it was 25. That's not true anymore. In fact, what's happening as we get into co-requisites, and in Florida, if you're alive, you can take intermediate algebra. That's the real thing. It doesn't matter if you had pre-algebra, 5 years ago and made a D in it, and we know you're not prepared. So if you kind of look at that chart and kind of move your finger up a little bit, basically what it is it's more affective characteristics that are looking at students and helping them become successful. That's part of our class. We have to start teaching more affective characteristics in the classroom. And then along with the tutor training, and I really harp on that too, untrained tutors are just as good as no tutors. So we got to teach them how to work more effectively with the student. Like I said earlier, we got to teach the student how to be more effectively with the tutor too. So what do I recommend as best practices? This is the Math Study Skills Evaluation. It's basically free. It's on my website. Later on, we'll show that. And it's no math on it, no math on it, no math on it. I actually repeat it several times to students and to faculty. It's just the study skills that are associated with math success. And it's all based on my dissertation I did many years ago on teaching study skills, and it significantly went up. Like Danny said earlier, I got more research. I got master's thesis. I got other course room. When I did quality enhancement plans for people in their colleges, we got the research that says teaching them study skills within the first 8 or 9 weeks does improve their grades and learning. We know that. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but basically this becomes a motivational technique. Most of them think they don't have the math gene. Most of them think I just can't do math. Once we give them the study skills evaluation, and most of them don't do well. In fact, they fail. And when I do my workshops, I tell them they fail. I do a little role play with the faculty members, a student. Everybody goes, oh my goodness, I failed. And I go, yes, that's great. In fact, you should have made worse. You made a 60. You should have made a 40 on it. Because that means most of your problems is we didn't teach you how to learn. That's our fault. That's our fault, not yours. So that gives them hope. And they look at it and go, oh, if I do different study behaviors, I have a lot better chance of being successful in math. I go, yeah, and it's not your fault. And I'm saying that because I don't want to blame them. Now, they may not have studied much, may have missed some classes. We know that. But the idea is that if they can look at this and go, oh, if I change this and this, I get better at note-taking, get better at taking the test, get better at reducing anxiety, my grades go up, I go, yes. And then when we get into that vicarious self-efficacy thing we talked about earlier, I have students who have done that tell the whole class. I ask them, will you tell the whole class that you used the relaxation techniques and it worked and you did better grades? Yes, I'll tell the class. That's when we get into that self-efficacy. They look at it and go, that person did it, I can do it too. And that's what we want. Okay? Let's go into this. Nationwide push and acceleration. Oh yeah, that's been for many years. In fact, we did that first National Math Summit several years ago in Matic because everybody was panicking over all this desire to improve the success. And a lot of it is based on the fact that a 3-sequence developmental math wasn't very good. In fact, since y'all had statistics, you can do this in your head. You got a 50% pass rate in 3 courses. What do you got at the end? If you start with 100 students, you got 12 and a half. That's what they've been hitting us on. Also, some of the prerequisites, especially for statistics, were really not needed. When I do that, my work with the people on COREX, we go down and see what do you really need for stats. But basically, what they're trying to do is get them through math faster. Also, I got to be honest, some of the colleges, not the colleges, mainly the states are saving money. They want to get them in or out. That's what I'm looking at too. How we can get them in and out of the program fast or get them in and if they fail too much, get them out. I'm sorry to say that, but I've seen that. Part of our job is to keep them in, teach them different ways to become more successful, along with good instruction. Now we get into the study skills. We got to do as a team. Remember that chart? A team. And with that team, it works really well, okay? How's integration technology in the courses? Oh, yeah, this is unreal. Yeah, the computer-based homework does an excellent job. Like I said earlier, we got to teach them. I'm going to show you a note-taking system on that one too. You know, goals of note-taking are changed. It's not, you do notes in the classroom, but a lot of it's online. How do you do that? Computer-based testing. You know, how do you take the test on a computer? It's different. Usually I teach students that, you know, how do you take a test on the computer? My first question is, can you go back? And sometimes you can, most often you can't sometimes. And how do you do that? You know, the ebooks, all this is different. We basically learned it with a textbook and a study guide. Maybe I'm aging myself, but that's okay. Now it's how many other resources can we use and how do we integrate that? And we'll talk about that again. How do we integrate that in the apps? Again, this is more information we're going to get into. We get into how to do online homework, which is different. You know, how to take a computer-based test. We already seen that. How to read the online textbook. Just a little bit of review, but how to take notes for online and computer courses, that's what I'm going to talk about. Because these are study behaviors that we know improves math success. We know that. We just got to teach them how to do it in the classroom. And you don't need much time. You just get them to practice it. It's like flipping the classroom. A lot of the study skills is learned outside the classroom, then gets into it. Anxiety, oh boy, like I said, boy, the anxiety. Procrastination, you know what happens, blanking out on tests. And it's true. It kills working memory. The mindset concept we talked about earlier. Get them into a mindset. But what I'm talking about, the mindset and mindfulness, that's good. That is called cheerleading sometimes. But we need a coach. When I mean a coach, I can talk about mindfulness and mindsets. Then I got to teach them the strategies. I got their motivation okay. Now we got to teach them the strategy. We give them the pep talk. Now what do we do? What do we do in those areas? So that's important too. And anxiety, relaxation techniques, again, we go through that and talk about it. Tensing, relaxing. Right now, if you put your feet flat on the floor and push your hands underneath the chairs and push down and pull up, that's a tensing, relaxing technique. You can do this in the classroom, the deep breathing, all this. Inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. We do it in the class. Visualization, where's your happy place? We get them to do that. I love doing this because I'll do it every once in a while in the class, especially toward the end of the class, because most of them may not be paying attention anyway. I get them kind of set up. And then what do they tell themselves? What are they talking about? What's going on? We talk about positive statements, good statements. I don't tell them to say they're going to make an A. I got too many students that are too smart because 20 questions, already missed 3, ain't got an A, I'm quitting. And I've seen that. I've seen them just stop and basically just turn their paper in. And managing the anxiety in the classroom, what can you do? You got to tell them you understand anxiety exists. You got to tell them if it's a lot of anxiety, you need to refer them out to a counselor. You also want to help them in the classroom. And the reason why I'm saying that is we do this. We help them. We prepare them. We practice. Everybody looks foolish. And I tell them, look, through the next test, somebody may be kind of closing their eyes and looking off somewhere. Some may be tense and relaxing. Some people do their deep breathing. That's fine. That's part of the whole system. Make them more successful and make them more, I can say, relaxed, that sort of thing. New activities, wow. The study guide is still in there. Various assessments, we still got that. Study skills, we already talked about that a few minutes ago. Inter-chapter assignments, we got better inter-chapter assignments where they got to write and do things. They actually got to write down. In fact, when I give my tests on math study skills, just like the regular math test, it basically is an open-ended question. Tell me 3 ways how do you reduce test anxiety. Tell me 5 ways that you can help yourself study better. All these are successful things. And what happens, what Hawks did is he actually built in a study skills test bank. In other words, you don't have to give them the questions. You make it as a homework assignment, make it as a test. It's like a real test, it's already built in. Saves you time, saves you places. Here we go, note taking, oh boy. The 3-column system you've seen before, I'm pretty sure. Examples in the middle, keywords on the left, explanations on the right. That's pretty much standard. But now, how do you use it with technology? And I got to take a sip of water because this gets really interesting. What type of devices can help our students learn better? Everybody has smartphones, almost. Everybody has apps. Smart voice recorder, Evernotes, they're all free. Voice recorder itself, which is different from smart voice recorder. Do you let them record your lecture? The Smart Pen is unbelievable. If you haven't heard about the Smart Pen, go talk to your disability office. This is a pen that you can actually write on a pad. It automatically records your lecture. It automatically transfers what you write to the computer. It syncs it up. It's unreal. And now I've heard another app, which is not even on here, from California, where you can actually record the class and mark the important parts of the information by highlighting and have it already synced up to the computer. And then if you take a picture, it'll sync it to the notes and to the computer all at one time. I have to get back with you on that one. That was amazing that I've seen. And the whole idea is how do you deal with that? Because they are going to do it. They're going to be recording you and you don't even know it. So what I've done is set up where it's okay to record. I'm not worried about that anymore. I tell them it's picture time. Take the pictures. I want them to take pictures because as they take pictures, that helps them with the tutoring. I'm not going to do the problem 5 times anymore. I may do it 3. But then I got questions and things like that. And there goes my other phone. Hang on. Yep, there it went off. As you can tell in my office. But I'm actually going to have them take the picture, and we want this, go to the tutorial area, or come to me and say, this is where I got stuck. When we do tutoring, what we hate is I can't factor. What can't you factor? I don't know, I just can't factor. Where do you get stuck? You can use the FOIL method. Where do you get stuck? I don't know. Take a picture, show me, show the tutor. That is great. This is the new way to do it. If you believe in apps or don't believe in apps, especially when you get some of the other apps like PhotoMath, and all those type of things. And of course, the best one is Wolfram Alpha. We're going to use them. I'm using them to help the students learn better and do well. It works really well. And that's why we get into the learning modality inventory. All the visual, auditory, or haptic, or what we call kinesthetic. If they're auditory, they're going to listen to their notes. If they're visual, they're going to see them. They're going to highlight them. That's what I said, that one program, you can actually highlight the notes. Actually, when you're reading the textbook online, you can highlight. So this is very good. Is how many different ways can we get into your head to help you become successful? How many ways, how many modalities can we use? The more modalities, the better. Stages of memory. This is a great one. This is going to be, in fact, I'm going to tell you, in a minute, we're going to have a test. And it's not going to be a true and false test, and it's not going to be a math test. It's going to be how learning breaks down type of thing, okay? What we got into a lot with instructors and basically math labs is that the student comes in, says they didn't do well on the test, and we tell them to go do their homework. I work a lot with Miami-Dade. I work with a lot of different colleges, and I'm working with their tutors and their STEM programs, and I go through this every time. Now follow what I'm saying, because this gets really important, because part of our job is to figure out what they don't know and where did the memory breaking down? Where is it breaking down? These are generic stages of memory. First one, sensory input. In other words, seeing it, hearing it, smelling it. If you're in chemistry, boy, I can go in the chemistry lab and still smell that stuff. That acetone really gets me. But anyway, it's paying attention. Not paying attention, you don't get it. If you're not there, you don't get it. That sort of thing. Sensory register, knowing when to take notes. This is interesting. Sensory register means, is it important or not? If we don't teach them note-taking skills, which is the next one, then we'll be successful. But if we don't teach them what is important, or we don't tell them how to figure that out, boy, here we go. I did 3 dividing polynomials. Is that going to be in the test? Some students go, no. I go, yeah, it is. I did 3 of them. Write it down. Take a picture. Go do that. Short-term memory, good note-taking system. Do you have a good note-taking system or not? I can look. One of the best strategies, and I'll get to those in a few minutes. What can you do? You have them take notes. You walk around, look at their notes. I can determine more about notes. It's almost like a horoscope. I can look at it and tell them what's going on. I have some students take no notes. Some students take a lot of notes. Some take notes I can't even read. Those I refer over to disability services, that sort of thing. So next one is work in memory, completing the homework. Did you practice? Did you practice? And if you did, what happened? Next one, long-term memory. Did you review? You got it in working memory, okay, and you worked on solving the problems. Did you review it? Because if you don't review it, you lose it, that sort of thing. Next one, abstract reasoning. This is the most difficult one, is understanding the concepts. How do you understand the concepts and generalize? If you have a problem with that, we got to really work with you. This is another one problem in students learning algebra. When we start looking at disability issues and regular issues, is not learning math concepts or not understanding the abstract reasoning. I've worked with students 130 IQ, gifted, had trouble with abstract reasoning. We had a problem. Do I put them in statistics? Pass with an A. Statistics is more, information and reading, not as much abstract. Then the memory output, how do you get it out? That's the test-taking skills. That's the anxiety thing, okay? That's the test-taking. Now, as you look at this, I'm kind of paraphrasing one of these that I put in my book, because what I want the students is to look at the scenarios and say, that's me, that's me, that's me. Not only that, this is how I fixed it. But here's one of them. You ready? Here we go. Penny is returning parent and is in intermediate algebra for the 2nd time. She made a low C in her first test without studying much because most of it was review. Her instructor said students who make C's or lower on the first test have difficulty passing the course. She understands the information in the class. However, she cannot remember how to do some of the problems on the test. Due to her work schedule, she has difficulty studying and doing her homework. Sometimes she rushes through her homework just to get it done. She's afraid that she may not pass the course. So what is Penny's successful stages and what is blocking her learning. Because I do it both ways. I always look at what is successful. Well, she's doing the information basically. Okay, she's there. So the successful stage is mainly the short-term memory. Now, the working memory, as some of you guessed, is her problem. That's the homework. She did it. We all know students who just click and go, click and go. So we have to talk to her about how do you successfully go through and do your homework? How do you really learn it? She was just kind of using it. So it's stuck in short-term memory, and then basically she couldn't remember for the test. So that's one of them. I'm gonna do one more, okay? Okay, Joe is an elementary algebra course. After working 5 years, he wants to get a degree to get a promotion at his job. He attends night courses, pays attention, does all his homework. Remember, homework is working memory, right? Does all his homework, okay? In fact, he gets 90 to 100% on all his assignments, but he makes a C on his first test. His employer says that he basically doesn't have a B average. They are basically going to not pay for his courses. So Joe doesn't really take any notes from his online homework problems or review them before the test. He's worried he would not get a B in the class. So what is his strength? Think about it. I kind of made a hint. He's actually doing the homework. The work in memory is the strength. Where is he breaking down on the test? Well, in my days of calculus, many years ago, I actually reviewed before the test. I talked to a lot of students and they basically don't. They just do the homework. So the breakdown there is long-term memory. And so that's the main one I see. They practice right, but they don't review. So that note-taking system I showed you earlier, basically I use it for every students and make them do it on their computer-based homework. That works. So the idea is if you look at these stages and you talk to the students, you can help them. So what do? We teach them how to take notes from the online homework and review it before taking the test. Okay, let's go on. Classroom activities. Yeah, we got more into these now. More people wanted classroom activities. And one of the first things I do is, the activity is what do you think about math? I do that the first class. What do you think about math? No cuss words, not like that. And surprisingly, about 20% of the people love math. They really like it. They just have trouble doing it. And then I, mentioned the more math, more money thing again. After teaching the 7 states of note-taking, we have that in there. What I had them do is maybe the last 5 minutes of class, because I know the last 5 minutes of class, most people are getting ready, they're getting going, and their short-term memory is shot. The working memory is shot. So do a little activity, share your notes. I walk around at that time and I look at the notes and go, don't say anything. Then I remember, then I go talk to them later. Another group discussion. What are the strategies to complete their math homework? What do you do? This is a group discussion. This basically is me asking everybody for 5 minutes to talk about it out in the classroom. I get a lot of answers. I get a lot of positive statements because you're asking about homework. Again, another one, and I'll jump down to the mental cheat sheet. Some people don't like me calling it that, and I respect your opinion, but before I used to call it memory data dump on my old books, and students looked at me like, what the heck is this? So what I tell them is that, hey, we're going to prepare for the test. What I want you to do is get together and decide, I'll say it, make up some cheat sheets. And I tell them, you ain't going to use it in class. I'll be looking. But you got to make them up in a group and talk to each other for 5 minutes. That is powerful. Because now to make that cheat sheet up, or mental cheat sheet as you call it, they have to do metacognitive learning. They got to figure out what they don't know. They know they don't put stuff on the cheat sheet, basically, that they know. They put stuff they don't. To do that, they got to figure out what they don't. And then they share it with each other. I've actually had them put it on the board. That told me a lot about what we needed to review, but even sharing it with other students made them learn it. And then they wrote it down. And then when we got to the first step of test taking, which you know is memory data dump. The first step is to write all the stuff down and get it down and make it successful. That's what we like. That's what we did. We did more group discussions. And even the 10 steps of test taking. Nobody does the 10 steps. I like 10. It's pretty neat. Assignment is make up 5 and share them. Make up 5 and share them, turn it as a homework assignment, and talk about it. These are activities you can do every other week or so, breaks up the monotony of the class for some students. And what it does, it makes them better learners. And like I said earlier, I put math study skill questions on my test. I'll say, write down your 5 steps to taking a math test. I'll say, write down 3 relaxation techniques. It's a regular test question. And I know statistically that if they get them all right and they have a 30 average or a 50 average or a 60, they're still not going to pass. I know that. But if I tell them it's on the test, they learn it. And we know that from the past, okay? Now, this is another one. Then we'll finish this up pretty quickly. My college already has a study skills course. Oh, this one I love. I get this all the time. Why do we need math study skills? I got to laugh because I'm working with several colleges on this now. The first question I asked is, okay, in the math study skills course, how much they talk about learning math? Or how much math study skills are in the test book? And what's your answer? I actually can hear you. None or very little. They just don't have it. Also, if it worked, why aren't our math pass rates going up? That's what I told them. You said everybody's taking it, a lot of people are taking it. We've done the research. It really doesn't help them that much. It helps them with history and sociology and sciences. That's the biology part, not the chemistry and physics, okay? But that's basically it. I mean, we're teaching it in the classroom as an application skill that make them more successful, and they're learning it outside. And again, I'm just gonna go through these real quick and then we'll take some questions, and I can keep talking forever, as some of you know. How do I sell my administration and integrating study skills? Well, passing math means they graduate. All the research we find is that math is the #1 course that students don't graduate. But even more than that, the research is pretty clear now. Most administrators think more about how to be effective on the campus and help students become more successful. They also think about FTEs, like money. And here's the truth. The more math they pass, the more FTEs the college gets in everything, not just math. We figured out students take math course 2 times. After that, we can't find them. I've actually had presidents tell me that that's okay. We can lose those 500 or 600 students in those math classes until I had to actually, I was going to pull out the calculator and show him something, but I thought that was not appropriate, you know. But I said, okay, yeah, you may lose a couple hours, but did you figure out how many hours you lost? Look, they're not in there. You lost 12. You didn't lose 3. You lost $10 million, and this is a big school, in the last couple of years because you didn't support the study skills to help them become more successful in math. And they go, oh, you got to be kidding me. And this is the quote, oh, because the math department was with me at that time, and he looked at him and said, how much money you need? They said, 50,000. I still get choked up over this because he said, yeah, I'll give it to you. You can help integrate math study skills. You can help with more tutoring. You can help with instruction. We want them to become more successful. So basically, that's part of it. And it's the STEM. Now what's happening with that anxiety issue, we're working with more people in STEM programs, and the chemistry people and the physics people are going, we're not getting them because they're not passing math. And I said, support us. And they really do. So anyway, we're going to have some questions. This is kind of my background a little bit and where you can contact me. Math Success blog. I am going to promote the National Math Summit. It's going to be in Orlando in about 3 weeks. You can still register for it. You can still basically get into it. It's $100. We would like you to attend the AMATIC conference, but you don't have to. Or if you're actually already attending the AMATIC conference, you can still register for this conference. It'll start Tuesday afternoon. I got a bunch of people coming in Tuesday night because you're going to meet all the national experts. Yuri Treisen will be there. In fact, he's giving the closing talk, and he wanted to. He asked us to. He's also supporting us because he supports us every year. There's going to be a lot of workshops and co-recs, a lot of workshops. And also, we're going to be there. The Winning Math 7th edition will be able to be previewed at our booth, and you can talk more, and you can look at how it can become more, like I said, I can distance it down, it's more usable and more effective. So I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have it over, kind of let Danny take it over and ask me some questions. If he doesn't, I'll just keep talking. I got more things to say. So.
Well, I'll just remind the audience that if you have any questions for Dr. Nolting, you can put them in the Q&A box, and I will read them out for him. Dr. Nolting, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, as teachers come around to using technology in the classroom, once they start using it, how does their and their students' experience change? What do they like? What do they see after they start using some of that technology in the classroom?
Well, the online homework is very successful, but Hawks has a good program. I like it where you can turn off the help and actually, test them for real. The other thing too is that with the other technology, with the apps and the websites, it's how do you learn math outside the math classroom? How do you learn math when it's busy? A lot of those apps, and basically you can just go ahead and click on them, and you can start learning algebra immediately. You have it set up where you can actually Google and put in what you want to learn, and it'll come out. So what we're finding out is that we have to embrace it. We have to teach the students how to be more effective with technology. And it does work, even to the point of practicing. When I'm doing these classes, I ask them, take out your cell phones. We're going to look at this stuff. Let's go through all the apps. And I ask them, what other apps you have? There is an amazing number of apps that'll help the students. Now, downside, I have math instructors tell me, and this is true, well, they just won't do the homework. They'll just use photo math and take a picture and do it. And I go, yep, they will. Some of them will. However, I warn them that, hey, if you do that, you're just hurting yourself. And guess what? You can't do it on the test. And guess what? There's no help button on the test. So the whole point is how to get them to use the technology effectively, but we have to demo it. And then we got to tell them what's effective and what's not effective. Like taking pictures. I don't let them take pictures all the time. I just say, this is a picture time. He'll get up and take a picture. I'm fine with that. You already know whether you're having trouble. You already know what problems you're going to miss. You've been grading tests for years and years and years. You already know. So you might as well tell them this is a problem that most people on the test take a picture, or this is a problem that you should take to your tutor and get better explanation. Or when the people keep asking questions, say, I have to move on, take a picture, and go ahead and go to the technology. Also, you record it. And then when they get over to the note taker, and this is really important, they show the picture. Then I tell them to turn on the recording device with Evernote or whatever, and have the tutor explain how to do the steps to them. Then I said, well, don't stop. Then I want you to repeat back to the tutor how to take the steps, and then take a picture of the correct way to do the problem. That's your review. I have people who have pictures and pictures and recording. They don't even review their notes anymore. They just review the pictures from they took it in the classroom and pictures basically from the tutor sessions. That's the new technology way to review and understand it. But we got to get them to understand about reviewing. And I'm going to harp on that because the number one thing I'm seeing is I did all the homework, I got it correct, I still fail the tests. What's wrong with your instruction? I'm going, probably nothing's wrong with my instruction, so tell me what you did. Go through the stages of memory, just like we did, and they did the homework, they never reviewed for the test. And I asked them why you didn't review. I didn't have anything to review for. I got them all right. I said, well, that's good if your short-term memory is good, and we gave you the test right after the homework assignment. But we're not going to do that. We're going to give it to you sometimes weeks later, and you're going to have to remember, and unless you got a real good long-term memory, you got to practice. So that's how technology is not only learning in the classroom, it's actually practicing the skills before the test. And I have people actually dump out their, how can I say this, their memory data dump, the information they want to learn. I have them put it on their cell phone. I have them, if they're auditory, recorded on their cell phone. They listen to it while they're driving around, not looking at it now, okay? And then when they first get their test, they dump it out. That works so perfectly because when they dump it out, they automatically say to themselves, I know some math, and it reduces their anxiety. And then when we do the next webinar, we'll go through some of the strategies. So technology is great. We got to teach them how to use it.
And we have one other question here. We on the agenda, we talked about the new student and group activities, and was wondering if you could just go into a little bit of how teachers might implement some of those in the actual classroom using this new edition.
Yeah, and what we did is we have an Appendix D that I'm actually looking at that lists about 3 or 4 different group activities per chapter. What we have decided to do is have it where the instructor can select a group activity. It could be what we call a classroom lecture part. That's the one I talked about, is how do you like math? And I do that the first day of class because I want to get it out and talk about it. We have the student groups where we put them in groups. And mainly this is at the end of the class, and it's not every week. And another one I didn't talk about is, how is learning math different from college and high school? I have them talk about that, and they share it. And I actually may make that a test question on the one. So that's actually a couple ways. You can do talk about the group activities, and they can share it in the classroom. You can have them do it themselves in like a short period of time at the end of every class. And I know that time is an essence, and I know we don't have enough time, but I've learned that most of the learning in math these days is now occurring outside the classroom. We've done this research. Math goes 4 times as fast as high school. And part of them becoming groups is that later on, they're going to group up outside of classroom and learn. So most of it is you leaving a discussion for 4 or 5 minutes, could be at the beginning of the class. And you know the first 4 or 5 minutes, people are still getting settled in. They're not ready yet sometimes. Or it's at the last part of the classroom where they're getting ready to go. And you talk about, this is what we're going to do. This is a group activity. I talk about learning environments. You know, where do you learn? Where's the best place to learn? How do you learn? It's all different now, different learning environments. And this is like, could be actually an instructor activity or a group. And tell me from this 3 or 4 minutes how you learn. Also, what I've done is actually put it on the board. I'll write down on the board, where do you learn? How do you learn? What are some strategies you do to remember math? And right before class, basically, I have people go up there and write down what the strategies are. You know, what do you do? Where's your best place to study? The worst one I ever heard of when I was at a college was in the graveyard. I go, oh, that's spooky. And they go, yeah. I said, but why that? Oh, I like to go there. It's nice trees. It's very peaceful. Nobody bothers me. I said, okay. I didn't want to ask any more questions. But the idea is that we discussed and other people talk to each other on the activities. So you just got to pick out which ones you want or make up your own. We do know that students talking to each other about study skills strategies, or even about what do you think is going to be on the test, does help and does work. And it's better than doing that factoring problem for the 5th or 6th time. If they don't get it about the 3rd time, they're not going to get it. So we got to help them to get and understand the information outside the class. That's why you flip the study skills, and that's what I'm talking about. You may talk about study skills for maybe 15 minutes a week and have them interact with each other about it and then put questions on the test. Or in your case, if you're using Hawk's materials, it's already there for them to take. So that's how you do it, okay?
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Nolting, for the great webinar today. We are just about out of time. I want to thank all of the attendees for being with us today. If you do have any more questions, please direct them to us at marketing@hawkslearning.com, and we'll compile them for Dr. Nolting. We will be emailing out a link to view this webinar on demand. That email will also include an updated table of contents and a comprehensive list of the new topics that are covered. You can also view this webinar as well as past and future webinars on our blog at blog.hawkslearning.com. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Yeah, let me talk about one more thing. I always forget something. I have the 6 type of test taking errors. That is an excellent group activity or instructor activity. And I actually list them on the board and I say, look, here's your test. You got them back. Let's figure out where you missed it. Now, I won't do this every time, but I'll do it one time because I want to know if they had concept errors or if they had misread direction errors or careless errors. That's another group activity because it becomes powerful. It gives them feedback and then they go, oh, I got to check for dropping signs, or oh, I got to check to make sure that I prepared for the test correctly because I have study errors. I crammed the night before. So I'll just leave it at that. And the last one is these techniques will improve the success of your students. I got the research. We just got to get them in there, teach them how to do it, have them take the math study skills evaluation so they know they can become motivated. So they look at the idea of study skills as a way to be successful in math and not that they don't have the math gene or they can't do math. So I'll end it at that. I know I ran over, but that is a positive statement. You can affect the world by helping these students pass math and get into their STEM programs. Okay, thank you.
We love all the information. Thank you again, Dr. Nolting.